Hi, it's Ramsey Dewey with the JX Fight Club in Shanghai, China. Today I'm going to answer a few questions. The first one comes from Mike Nianorius, maybe. And he asks, what is the fighting style or the martial art that allows the fighter to essentially knock out their opponent the easiest? Or to produce that one punch destructive force where you can just hit them and walk away? And I would say, as far as martial arts or fighting styles that have produced the most fighters and athletes capable of doing that, two, boxing and wrestling. In wrestling, you hit your opponent with the planet. Every culture has a form of wrestling. It is instinctive. It's in our blood, whether you want to admit it or not. Boxing is, well, how can I put this? They're the guys who spend the most time perfecting their art. And they're extremely good at finding, those very delicate spots like the chin and so on where you can actually knock somebody out. All that other stuff that professes one-touch knockout power, no-touch knockouts, five-finger death touches or whatever, forget about it. Okay? Stick with what is time-tested and proven. Next question. Our next question comes from Spartan MLG650S, interesting screen name. He says, you probably shouldn't pull guard in a street fight against multiple opponents, but how is striking any better than grappling in that situation? My answer is, guys, stop getting into street fights. There's no good reason to get into a street fight. Okay? If you're getting into more than maybe one or two street fights in your life, you're probably the one starting it. So cut it out. Just, if you're not getting paid handsomely to fight, don't get into a fight. I'll tell you what. The overwhelming majority of street fights can end simply by walking away. See, there are 4 steps to all fights. 4. The first one, posturing. That usually means escalating the fight. It's nonverbal communication. Second one, sometimes it is verbal communication. Sometimes it's just saying, hey, I'm tougher than you. I'm going to beat you up or whatever. Saying angry words. Right, the second one is fighting. The third one is flight or running away. And the fourth one is submission, and that's an important one. Right? Generally, we talk about submission in MMA and jiu-jitsu, and we think of that as a bad thing. But you know what? Somebody comes up and pushes you, and there's a very real probability that if we get into a fight, somebody's going to get injured. It could be a lawsuit, could be a death, could be a serious injury. Who knows? So it's so much easier just to skip straight ahead to the 4th step, submission, and say, hey, you were right. I'm sorry. Walk away. Guess what? Do that, you just won a street fight. But, I know what you're thinking. You're like, no, that doesn't answer my question. Let's talk about actually striking if you have to fight. Okay, yeah. Really, if you're fighting multiple opponents with your bare hands, you're at a serious, serious disadvantage no matter what you do. So get distance in between you, get a weapon, understand how to use it. Even an improvised weapon is better than nothing. Okay, next question. Our next question comes from a double last name, again, interesting screen name, and he asks, what is the best way to train effectively and most quickly for self-defense? How could I be street ready within, say, 2 years? That's a good question. I'm going to tell you, there are no shortcuts. There is no magic martial art or magic recipe that's going to make you invulnerable, okay? The secret is consistency. Consistent training over time. Now I'm going to tell you an analogy from my friend Dave. He's a big, strong dude, one of the strongest humans I've ever shared the mat with. And, oh man, dude is just monstrous as far as his muscular power. And he wrote an essay today about how to develop strength. And if you'd never met this guy, you'd probably just brush it off like, oh, that's just really general advice, because it's basically, do the basic lifts, be consistent about it, eat good food, rest well, all that basic advice you probably already know up here, but not so well down here. Okay? It's exactly the same way with self-defense and martial arts. You got to be consistent with it. Okay? So, learn how to use your body first. Learn how to wrestle, learn how to box, learn some jiu-jitsu, all that stuff. Learn how to use weapons as well. Even say a gun. A gun is a very effective tool for self-defense. So if you live in a country like the USA where you're allowed to carry one, well, great. Now you have a very effective self-defense weapon, but you still have to put in a lot of time training with that thing to understand how to use it safely, how to use it properly, and how to actually be prepared if push comes to shove. All right, that's a lot of stuff going on at the same time, man. So again, become an athlete first. Learn how to use your body. Learn hand-to-hand combat first, I would recommend, and, add weapons on top of that. And, yeah. Next question. Caleb Moore asks, flexibility, important or not for fighting? The answer, yes, super important. The more flexible you are, the more techniques you can perform. For example, if you're flexible, you can throw head kicks, which is awesome. It gives you this whole extra level of stuff that your opponent has to watch out for. It's got, this whole extra range of combat that you're able to use. Okay? If you got a lot of hip flexibility, you can do some really cool stuff on the ground. I always run into people, a lot of new students, they come to me for training and they have really, really bad hip flexibility, which makes it very difficult to do some really basic stuff. I'm talking about basic stuff, not like fancy rubber guard movement. And, if you are super flexible, that's some great stuff. I mean, I've used that stuff in fights too, right? But, yeah, again, the more flexible you are, the more techniques you're able to perform, and the less prone to injury you are. So do something every day to get more flexible. Our next question comes from Carl Anderson, who asks, Ramsey, how do I become a better training partner? And that's a great question, because, over the years I've seen a lot of bad training partners, and from time to time early on in my career I have been a bad training partner. So, first of all, just practice empathy. Ask yourself, would I want to experience what I'm doing to my training partner? Now, I'm not talking about, just making them uncomfortable, because you need to become comfortable being uncomfortable if you want to be a fighter. I mean, injuring your training partners. Just don't do that. Right? So if you're performing a potentially dangerous technique like a heel hook, when I do that stuff, I'll catch the position, but instead of cranking on it, I will let go and then continue to fight for something else like a sweep or a get up or just something else that isn't going to tear up their ACL. When I am, kickboxing or boxing or doing the stand-up phase of MMA sparring, right? I'm not going to knock my training partners out. I pull my punches, I pull my kicks, and generally, I tell myself I'm not going to hit any harder than I would like to be hit in this situation. Okay, and at the same time, you want to keep the level of intensity up to a certain degree. You don't want to just be a pushover. Absolutely not. I know the Gracie brothers like to say keep it playful, and I kind of hate that. I kind of hate that because a fight is not playful. It's violent and chaotic, and we have to be prepared for that. Now, that doesn't mean kill each other in the gym. Absolutely not. It means take care of each other in the gym so that you can do it again and again and again the next day. So practice moderation in all things. And, I trust if you do that, you can govern yourself well in the gym. Also, ask a lot of questions. If you don't know what your training partner is doing, ask them. And if your training partner is kicking your butt, let go of the pride a little bit and, see if you can learn a lesson from that instead of, following that compulsion to get your own back, which a lot of us naturally have because we want to succeed. And when, the pragmatic experience of fight training tells us, hey, you just failed and you would have died if that was real, that's a big blow to the ego. I get that. So, just take a step back, step outside of yourself for a moment, and always, always, always make sure to check yourself. Excellent question. Next question comes from Caleb Moore. He says, I understand you're all about sport fighting, but I want to know if you also train with weapons, specifically Filipino martial arts. And also, do you practice with guns for self-defense? Now, I live in the People's Republic of China, and it is illegal to own and carry and use firearms here, so unfortunately, no. Filipino martial arts, I'm not greatly familiar with those, to be honest. I have not trained in Kali or Eskrima or Arnis or any of that stuff. I do, however, train with weapons. I mean, Filipino martial arts, they're not the only martial arts that train with weapons. Every culture has a form of weapons and weapons combat, weapons training. Okay? So, I mean, I've trained in a bunch of different weapon styles, kobudo, Okinawan kobudo, with the staff, with the sai, with the nunchucks, and all that sort of stuff. Um, I'm a big fan of historical European martial arts, the English longsword and rapier and saber and all that sort of stuff. Um, I love swordplay as far as Japanese swords go, the katana, daito, that sort of thing. Um, I'm generally speaking a big martial arts nerd. I don't spend a great deal of time, not anymore, with weapons training because, again, I believe weapons are an extension of the body, and to be good at those, we have to understand how to use our body first. But no, I am very interested in that sort of stuff. So if you have any good recommendations about Filipino martial arts training, hey, leave a comment down below and let me know. Next question. Our friend however you say your name, asks, Ramsey, why do you paint your toenails? Yeah, if you haven't noticed, I paint my toenails with acrylic nail polish. Why do I do that? It's because, well, before I did that, they kept breaking off. I broke off my toenails about 6 times over the years, and that kind of sucks when that happens. And I got sick of it, and I thought, what can I do to make them stronger? Simple, paint them. Nail polish solves a lot of problems. I know people ask you questions all the time. Why do you have paint on your nails? Are you some sort of weirdo? Yeah, we're all weirdos in our own special way. But seriously, it does make them stronger, so if your nails breaking off is an issue, go ahead, put some nail polish on. But be prepared for people to give you funny stares and ask you lots of questions. Next question comes from Gary Cole, and I'm running out of battery, so I'm trying to run through these quickly. He asks, would a combination of boxing and savate be good for fighting, basically? And yeah, sure. I mean, I've met a lot of good savate fighters, and I've met some who weren't as great. But, it really is about the athlete and how much the athlete trains and is consistent in training, and if they're really honest about what their martial art is and what their goals are. If they train to win fights and they address that honestly, they're going to win fights. We have one more question from Zadeta. He says, Ramsey, how does it feel to have lived in 3 different countries? Now, if you don't know, I currently live in Shanghai, China. I was born in the United States. I'm a first-generation American. My family's from England. And I also lived in Argentina for several years. Now, how does it feel? Well, good, I guess. It's when you live in a different country, when you experience a different culture, you learn to step outside your paradigm, that little box that we're born into, that we're not necessarily aware that we were inside of in the first place. And you can start to see yourself in a different light. Living outside of America for so long, it seems very foreign to me when I do go back to the United States. It seems like a foreign country to me in a lot of ways. When I talk to my American friends on Facebook from time to time about the political climate or social issues or just cultural things, sometimes I'm like, man, are we from the same planet? But yeah, it's a great way to expand your mind. It's a great way to expand your linguistic ability. And the more words you know, the more languages you can speak, I would say the more pathways for thought that can open up. And that's a great thing. So, great question. Thanks for asking. Next question comes from the Scribe, who asks, what things matter most in fighting one-on-one? I would say number 1, experience, and number 2, athleticism, and number 3, your will to persevere and your ability to be unbreakable while simultaneously being able to break your opponent's will to continue. Okay, but yeah, experience number 1. If you are an experienced fighter, if you've got a lot of experience in the gym, if you've logged thousands of hours on the mat, you're going to have a huge advantage over the guy who doesn't have those things, right? Technique can buckle to athleticism. Also, I've seen so many times a guy who knew all kinds of techniques and whatnot get lambasted by a guy who was just a better athlete. So do not skip athleticism. Do weight training, do flexibility training, do cardio and all that good stuff, hit the bags and, run your sprints, etc., right? And of course, developing an unbreakable will, stubborn will, like Ferdinand Foch used to say, was the most important thing about winning a war. And I would say, yeah, that also translates into a one-on-one fight. Awesome question. One more question from Anonymous. Ramsey, what was your fighter nickname, and where did you get it from? My fight nickname was Danger. Ramsey the Danger Dewey. It was alliterative. I didn't make it up myself. I got it from some of my college roommates. We were making a goofy kung fu movie. It was a comedy. You can actually see it here on my YouTube channel. It's not great, but it was my first attempt at fight choreography back in the day, and we had fun. But since I was the only guy on the crew who knew anything about martial arts, I ended up doing all of the stunts. And so my friend Luke said, Ramsey Dewey, he does his own stunts, Ramsey Danger Dewey, doing this ring announcer type of voice. And, it kind of stuck. And so when I started fighting, that's the fight name I went by. So, man, if you're fighting, make sure you are the danger rather than one in danger. That'll help quite a bit. We have another question, last question from our friend Jauna later. Sorry, I really don't know how to say your screen names, guys, but he says, Ramsey, I see that jumping and sprinting and this sort of plyometric movement is a big part of your training. So I want to know, how fast can you sprint? And the honest answer is not super fast. Now, I did a race, a short sprinting race, like 100 meters, for my daughter's sports day at her school, and I was competing against like 15 other guys, all the dads of the kids, and I didn't come in last, but I didn't come in first either. So, since I've added sprints and plyometrics to my training a number of years ago, my sprinting has improved quite a bit. But again, I'm not a speedster per se, but it is great for you. I mean, do that stuff. Add sprints, add jumps into your training if you are not doing that already. It adds some explosion and some power and some muscle to you. So, good stuff, good questions. Hey, if you have any other questions, please leave them in the comments down below. Thank you for watching. Now, get out there and train.